Welcome to the National Museum of Asian Art. I'm a volunteer docent. Today, I'm going to share with you Hanami, viewing cherry blossoms through the eyes of Japanese artists. I'm going to talk in three parts. The first two parts are brief. I'm going to introduce a little history of Hanami. I'm also going to introduce to you a little history of the National Cherry Blossom Festival in Washington, D.C. I presume many of you have lived in this area or came to D.C. to enjoy the Cherry Blossom Festival. And the main part of today's talk is viewing cherry blossoms through the eyes of Japanese artists. So a little history of Hanami. And this is a screen that our museum has, which is one of my favorite Japanese screen. And just looking at it, do you feel, although there's no people in this picture, but you can feel the life there, right? To me, I can see the beauty of cherry blossom. I can also smell the subtle scent of the cherry, and I can even feel the breeze blowing onto my face. So although there's no human figure in this screen, you can feel the life. They hanging their laundry under the cherry tree. It's so vivid and so lively. So we say Hanami. What does Hanami really mean? How many of you can read Japanese or Chinese? You can raise your hand. Probably not very many. Japanese, even to me, is a very difficult language. So here's the kanji, the Chinese character of Hanami. Literally means flower viewing. So it's not necessarily just cherry blossom, it's flower viewing. And what it is in Japan is enjoying the transient beauty of flowers. Doesn't matter whether it's plum or cherry. I'm going to share with you where that tradition came from. So this tradition of admiring the flower blossom, especially in this case was plum blossom, was originated in ancient China. I'm sharing with you an interesting painting here. It was by a Song Dynasty artist. He combined all three plants in one. It's this, we call the three friends of winter. One is pine, one's bamboo, one's plum. I still have a plum tree in my backyard. It started to bloom in February, lasts till now. The reason why the Asian people appreciate those kind of flower blossom is the plum blooms so early in the very cold winter. So they use plum as a symbol of resilience. So I think we all a bunch of plum blossom during this past 2 years were so resilient to the pandemic. And here I would like to share with you another painting from our museum collection. The other one is from the Taipei Palace Museum. So the title of this one is Composing a Poem on Plum Blossom. It's formally attributed to a very famous Song Dynasty artist. What you see here is a mountain. Sorry, let me go back. There's a mountain, and then there's a there's a gentleman sitting down under the plum tree with his assistant grinding the ink for him. He is composing a poem about the beauty, the transient beauty of this plum. So this tradition was introduced to Japan when they first started this hanami, it dates back to the Nara period. It's about the 8th century CE. They also started with the plum blossom viewing. They have a very famous 1,000 poems. In this poem, if you look at how many plum was being mentioned and how many times cherry was being mentioned, you can certainly tell at that time people appreciate plum a little more or a lot more than the cherry. Then again, also in this particular album, they mentioned the first sort of a formal banquet, hanami banquet under the plum tree by a Japanese official. And then things start to change. They start to move, by the Heian period, the sakura, the cherry blossom attract more attention. By the way, this is one of the oldest cherry tree in Japan. It's 1,000 years old. And under this particular emperor Saga, he held a party under the cherry tree instead of plum tree. And then by the 15th or 16th century, they planted many cherries in a mountain like Yoshino. So the royal family will travel to that mountain, appreciating this beautiful cherry. And then the shoguns, the shogunate started to plant a lot of trees around their castle as well. So for example, this particular castle is a UNESCO site. Every year there's hundreds and thousands of people go there to enjoy. And our museum also has a very interesting woodblock print depict that beauty. And then by the late 17th century, hanami really became a popular activities among not just the royals or the shoguns, but among the common people. So here, I would like to share with you a hanging scroll. It's not a woodblock print. You probably all heard of Hokusai. Hokusai is very famous for his woodblock print, but actually he himself, during his 90 years, he produced more than 30,000 of art pieces, and our museum has the largest collection I think not even within Japan. I think we are the largest, we host the largest collection of his artwork. Not very many woodblock print, but many other type. So let's take a look at these particular hanging scroll. I can make it a little larger. I would like you to tell me what you have seen on this painting. Any volunteer? You can just unmute yourself. We see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 figures, right? So they probably there are 4 beautiful ladies. They dress up very nicely, very beautiful. And then we see 2 young men here. One of them put his hand around one of the ladies. So it's possible they are geishas and they are walking out. And then if you going behind in the background, you see many beautiful ladies with their screen open. So I have a shoji door in my office. It's in a pocket. It's a pocket door, so you can push it aside. And they are, because the weather is so beautiful, they are opening up their whole house so they can appreciate all the beauty and they can breathe in the beautiful spring breeze. And then in the far away, You can see families walking under the tree. So this Hokusai lived in the 18th or 19th century during the Edo period. So this really showed us how did the common people enjoy cherry blossom during that time. So cherry blossom hanami really is one of the most popular national activities in Japan. I was lucky, before I joined the museum, I work at the National Institutes of Health today. I saw one of my former neuroscientist friend, Alan here. So I started a US-Japan collaboration. So I had the opportunity to visit Japan several times. And one time when I was there, they asked me to go there to train some of their government officials. So it was just during the cherry blossom. So cherry blossom coincide with a lot of things for new, because the Japanese has their fiscal year started at April 1st. So their new school will open, or if you try to look for a new job, usually start April 1st. And then it's also a time for families and friends and colleagues in your workplace really get together. Because the weather is so different, it started very early in March in the southern part, and then it lasts all the way till May. But the individual blooming is still very short. It's about 7 to 10 days, maximum 2 weeks. So how do the Japanese celebrate Hanami? As I said, they will under the trees in this particular castle I just showed to you. You can tell it's a family gathering. So like this family with their children and that family with their elders. It's just everybody goes with their picnic blanket and under the tree. They occupy a space. Sometimes they will stay all day long there. And they also can row boat or walk in the park. Sometimes they stay as late as the midnight. They have lit lanterns. It's really gorgeous. And of course, you have to have some food. So I remember that season when I was there attending the meeting during the tea break, they will offer me this hand-wrapped mochi was stained with cherry blossom, and also have cherry blossom sakura tea, which is very delicious. So I'm drinking my tea today with my Japanese mug. Try to remember that great time. All right. How many of you have lived in the DC area or came to DC to celebrate the cherry blossom festival? Yeah, I saw one. I'm sure Gretchen. Oh, almost all of you have been here. But I'd like to share a little bit behind history with you. Today, we can enjoy the cherry blossom. We have to thank several people. The first one is a lady. She's a very interesting person. She's a photographer, a writer, and because her brother was serving in Japan as a diplomat, she visited Japan. When she was there, she saw the beautiful cherry blossom. She said, what about if we introduce those cherry blossom back home? So she came home and she was just making proposals and talked to many people. But not very many people are so enthusiastic because it costs money, right? So about 20 years later, there's a doctor who is a botanist, who is a scientist, David Fairchild. He wanted to introduced many different plants into our country. And so he thought, maybe I will import some and test it in my backyard. He lived in Chevy Chase, actually not far from where I am now. So he planted 100 cherry trees, and it certainly survived and bloomed. So then in 1909, Mr. Taft became the president, and then Miss Skidmore knew that Mrs. Taft had lived in Japan. So she wrote to her, said, do you think it's a great idea if we can introduce cherry trees to the national capital? Immediately, Ms. Taft just wrote back to her, said, yes, that's a great idea. And just by coincidence, the next day, a famous Japanese a chemist, he actually had many important discovery. He was in DC with one of the counselors, I think, when he heard about this, and he was also interested in this. So he went back to Japan, talked to the mayor in Tokyo, said, why don't you send some cherry trees as a gift to Washington, DC, so to establish this friendly connection. So they are being very thoughtful. They are not selecting little trees, and they are selecting mature trees. So they selected about 3,000 trees, getting ready to ship to us. When the tree arrived in Seattle first and then arrived in DC, the Department of Agriculture said, wait a minute, we need to test them because what if they bring bugs? They will infect our trees. So they did. Very unfortunately, those trees are all infected. So that's a very hard decision. Finally, President Taft had to sign the consent saying, unfortunately, we can't plant those trees. But among all these 3,000, they save a few. I believe it's 25. They want to be under the very close observation under scientists and the park, the national park staff, and they wanted to see how do we control insect infection. So 3 years later, because the Japanese felt so bad that they said, oh, we sent you so many trees, but it didn't survive. So let's give you some more. So this time they sent 3,020 trees, and they are planted around the tidal basin. So you can see over the years, the scenery is really the same. Although some of the individual tree cannot last that long, usually their lifetime is about between 80 years and no more than 100 years. But because they are being taken care of so well by our national park staff, we still have some left. And after that, I don't know about Eastern Shore, but many other places across the US have cherry trees that we can appreciate. And they were even introduced worldwide. So I'm going to have a little quiz here. The first one is very easy. Where is this place? You have to unmute yourself.
Paris.
Oh, yep.
Paris.
Paris.
Very good. Paris, France. The second one is also easy. Any guess? Anybody travel to East Asia?
Nepal.
Or actually South Asia? Who said?
Someone in the chat says Nepal.
Nepal, very close, very close. This is in India. So you probably see all those prayer flags, and you will see them in Nepal, in India, in Tibet. And the third one is easy too, I think, for this crowd. You all world travelers. Any
Turkey.
guess?
Turkey.
Turkey, very good. Actually, there is a story affiliated with it. So in 1890, there's a shipwreck. There's a Turkish ship was sailing to Japan, but they were damaged by the storm. So there's 587 people on board, only 67 survived. The Japanese sent out their little boat, try to save them. And so in 2010, they decided they are going to give Turkey 587 cherry trees just to sort of keep this friendship going. That's why you see a lot of cherry trees. And the last one, I really think it's not fair. I don't think anybody can guess. This could be in DC, could be in Bethesda, could be in your backyard. But this is in Brazil because there is a big Japanese population who live in Brazil. And nowadays, there's so many countries have them. And in the North, in America, Canada, US, even in Australia, New Zealand, if you ever been to Bonn, Germany, the former capital of Germany, you can see this whole street. And this one is in China, Wuhan University. It's all surrounded by beautiful cherry trees. So yesterday I was chatting with Lynn. I was telling her that I'm going to share with you some variety of cherry trees in our national park. And if you come to the DC area, you will see most of the cherry is this one, 70%. And even in the whole world, that's the majority of cherries. That's the one bred by the Japanese. The wild cherry tree actually originated in the Himalayan mountains. And then you will see probably a lot of these type as well. They have multiple petals. And then weeping cherry is very popular. There are two I would like to point it to you. One is called autumn flowering. You say autumn flowering, does that mean it does not bloom in the spring? No, that's not the case. It might bloom twice. If the weather in autumn is ideal, they will bloom the second time. And this particular one, they said less than 1%. Actually, they only have one outside the National Park Service. So next time when you come to DC, try to find this particular tree. And
Yuan, sorry to
yes.
Yuan. There is a
Yes.
question in the chat. Are these ornamental cherry trees or do they bear edible fruit?
That's a wonderful question. These are ornamental cherries. You don't see fruit, not edible fruit. These are breeded by yeah, for the beauty of it. You don't have fruits, or it has fruit, but it's not edible. So here is one of the oldest cherry trees. It's more than 1,500 years old. And legend said it was planted by one of their emperors, the 26th emperor. I apologize because I gave this in Chinese, so I forgot to change it back to English. Anyway, the good news is 50 of these trees were given to us now. You can see them from the branches nurtured from this particular tree now is planted in West Potomac. So I'm sure you all appreciate the beauty of the cherry trees in DC. So next time, this year it might be a little late, but next time when you come to DC, let me share an interactive map with you. Let's see, cherry blossom. All right, this map is wonderful. So if I put my mouse here, see weeping? So that means in this area, you will see weeping trees. And this particular area, remember I said there are some trees survived after that burning, the first group. So these area is a golf course. I even asked them, they said, you can go there. It's you can access that area. And so you will see some of the first group of trees. And here's a Kawanza, here's a Sargent, different type. And the Cherry Blossom Festival always started from here, and that's where the second group, the 3,000 trees, now still have about 100 left. They are all in this area. So, and also different flowers bloom at different time. Some of them are later. So if you come now, you might still be able to see some of them. Anyway, so this is a very useful map. Next year, if you come to see cherry tree, you should open this map and to see where to go. So we all enjoy cherry blossom festival, and you can do picnic under the tree, but the park ranger told me, please don't step on the root zone. They already have trouble. And just a few days ago, they lit this lantern. This lantern is a pair. They gave us one of them is 300 years old at that time. Now it's close to 400. And the other one is still in Tokyo. And we had a parade just a few days ago this year. And usually they also elect a queen. And a more interesting program for me is they invite young ladies to come as the princess. They are hoping to become the leader of future leaders. All right. The most important thing for us, for Gretchen and me, is come to our museum, to visit our museum. And we have a beautiful whipping cherry as well. Our museum's open. We're going to have we just got the good news today. We're going to have on-site tours soon. Our museum collection has more than 45,000 objects from all over Asia. And today I'm going to share some of them with you, focusing on Japanese art. So we know Japanese art has many different styles. We're not going to talk about sculpture today, but I'm going to talk about painting. There are many different styles. One is called the karai, meaning Chinese style. They first learned those kind of painting from China. Later, they developed their own, it's called Yamato style. I'm going to share both of them with you. And also, we already see one screen. We're going to see more screens. And then you are probably all familiar with the wood block print, the ukiyo-e, the floating world, especially. Then I'm going to share one piece of ceramic, one piece of lacquerware. They all related to cherry blossom. So how many of you have heard about the book called Tale of Ganji? Yes, Alan and Gretchen, of course. Tale of Ganji is the oldest novel in the whole world. It was composed by this lady. She was, I believe, is in the 11th century, if I remember correctly. I could be wrong. So this particular lady, she works as an official in the court. So she wrote this. I have the Chinese translation. It's 800 pages. It's very long. It's a story about this person, Ganji. So now let's take a look at this particular painting. It's color and ink and gold on paper. What do we see here is we see this beautiful cherry tree sort of intertwined with the pine, and this beautiful young lady sitting here with a pen in her hand with the ink and facing a blank piece of paper. I'm a writer myself. I think we all have that moment, right? We call the writer's block or something. You're puzzling, thinking about how am I going to write the next chapter, right? So that's what she's doing. And you can see she has books behind her, and then she has this cherry blossom pattern on her dress. And then if you go further away, there's a river. You see people taking a ferry. There's fishermen, and there's farmers in the fields. There's a little temple here, also surrounded by cherry trees. There's a traveler with a donkey, and there's even like geese in the air. It's just very quiet and quiet scene in the country. So I would like to show you a painting. So after she wrote that book, it became very popular. There are many, many, many paintings using the story inside that tale, inside that book. So this one I'm showing you is chapter 34, telling us an interesting story. So again, this is a screen. This screen, you can tell, how do we make a screen, especially those kind of fancy screens for the royal people or the shogunate? You can see a lot of squares, like gold squares. What these are, like gold foil. They make the gold very, very, very thin, and then they patched on the screen. So it took the apprentices many years just to learn how to do that. And we have this beautiful screen here, and we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 young men. They are not women, although they are wearing a robe, but they are young men. And can you guess what are they doing? Any guess?
Are they guarding the trees?
They are guarding the tree. That's an interesting idea. It does look like they might be guarding the trees, especially like this two young men, right? But they are looking at something. They are looking at this. They're playing a ball game. It's their football. It's their football. So I used to play football when I was young with the boys. And when you play football, you have to concentrate your eyes. Your eyes is always follow the ball. But there's one person, he's not looking at the ball. And, let's see what he is looking at. He is looking at her. So the Japanese young lady is like ancient Chinese. If you're a high class young lady, you could never be seen by a strange man, like a young, especially a young man from outside your family. You can be seen by your brothers, probably cousins, but never been seen by a young man. And this woman's title is the third princess, and she was a princess, and her father married her to the hero in this book called the Ganji. So she was already a wife, a young wife, but he's an officer, a young officer, or also a royal person. Usually he would never had the chance to see her, but there's a little cat here. There's a little cat you probably can see was tied under her, but the cat was naughty, so the cat ran out. So when she ran out, the curtain was open. That's why this young lady was exposed, and he saw her beauty, immediately fall in love with her. So that's the chapter 34. So I just went back recently, just read that chapter, tried to make sure I remember the story. So I told you there are different type of paintings in Japanese art. Originally, they learn a lot from the Chinese, but then they develop their own style. So for example, this one is painted by Tosa. So this is a hand scroll. Why we call it hand scroll is because I have a hand scroll here. It's because it's very, very long usually, and then you can't hand it. It's so long, you can't hand them all. What you do is you open one segment. Sorry, I need to put it closer to me. You open one segment, you view it, and then after you view it, you roll it up again, then you open the second segment. That's what a hand scroll is. And this is a very long hand scroll. And this is the first part. It's a fourth season. So this is the springtime. So you can see they have cherry trees and there are people under the cherry trees, but they're very Japanese to me. They are developing their own style of painting. So this particular school called Tosa. And in Japan, if you're a good master, so for example, your last name is Grinnell. If your student, your postdoc is good, I almost became a postdoc of Alan. And so he could give me his name as Grinnell, and then he will give me maybe his middle name as my middle name. So they have the school of Tosa, and they have hundreds of painters because they lasted from 14th century to the 19th century. They specialize in the subject and technique derived from Asian Japanese art as opposed to schools influenced by the Chinese. Okay, and they provide many official painters to the court. Now, let me introduce you to a different school. This school is called Kano. The major artist is this guy. He was one of the major one. They are not only doing the Japanese style, they're very good in the Chinese style. They were like, this particular person was the first official painter for one particular shogunate. So what their job is when they're hired by the court is go to the court, paint the screens and paint their panel doors for the castle. So if you look at some of his painting, if I cover the name of the signature to my untrained eyes, this will be a Chinese painting, very much like the Chinese painting we as Chinese very familiar with. And I like to introduce you to one of his painting depict the cherry blossom. Remember, I said the mountain Yashino is the most famous place to have cherry blossoms. And I show you one of our woodblock print has hundreds and thousands of cherry blossom cover the entire mountain. Is there a question? Okay, maybe not. But this particular one, I really like it because there's not very many trees. There's only 2 trees in the foreground, a few dotted in the background. And then if you look at the tree, the trunk is turned. It's not straight. It shows how old the tree is. And also the cherry blossom itself is not very detailed outlined. It's just a few pink dots and then a few darker colored dots representing the ones has not bloomed yet. And then if you look at the waterfall, I counted, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. There's 12 strokes just representing this water flowing down. But it's not very, you can say, well, that's not very realistic, but to me it is, because such a simple strokes can represent that flowing water down. And then if you follow this water through the mountains, when they hit the river here, you can see again, there are only a few strokes, and there's even white dots here, probably represent the waves, the water splash out, or maybe it's the cherry blossom falling down. Here is a piece of rock, and then there's a little green represent the moss probably, and a little brownish probably is the dirt. But you can see this painting, although it's very quiet, but I feel this painting speaks to me and really shows the beauty of the cherry blossom. And you can imagine you're sitting by this little stream or little river and just breathing in the spring and appreciating the color of the cherry and just enjoy that very transient moment. All right, so we have seen some screens, and let me share with you some more screens. This particular screen, I try to count how many people on the screen. It's almost impossible. It's more than 100. I can count. So let's go in a little bit so we can see a better detail here. So this screen is a pair. The one on the right is represent spring, and the one on the left representing autumn. Let's look at the spring this time. So I'm going to make it bigger. So you can see there's a group of family coming in with their children, probably with their servant carrying the picnic box, and there's a group of shogunate or warriors, and they already finished and they walking out. Here are people, they came by horse. There are group of people, they all wear hats, you know, some of them carrying swords. Today we just heard a seminar about swords making, metal making. And then you see there's a young lady in the family holding her child sitting inside the sedan. And then there's group of families carry their baby on the back or holding the hands of their children. And it's all very detailed. And then you can see people sitting under the tree, drinking tea, and there's dancers and musicians playing music. They're just having fun, and all kinds of people and all different families. It's just gorgeous. And this type of painting and the painter usually serve for the court or for the shogunate. And he himself also did something very important, which lasts till today, because he is the pioneer who popularized ukiyo-e, the woodblock print. So let's take a look at his woodblock print here. And this is, I call it black and white. Actually, it's that's not accurate. It's ink painted it's ink printed on the paper. He will draw the figure. I will share with you how was it made later. Does this look familiar? We already saw it in the previous one. Remember, I shared with you there's a mother with a kid carrying inside the sedan. So he repeatedly using the same scenery in his woodblock print. After him, there's so many great woodblock printers, including Hokusai. So I would like to share with you a triptych. So it's 3 print. Actually, if you put them together, it's one drawing. because it's so detailed, they have to divide it into 3 prints. And let's take a closer look here. How many different colors do you see in this print? We see peach, right? Dark peach color. We see light, like pink color. We see this olive green. We have this purple. We also have the yellow in the background. Of course, we have black. So there, and then we have this light grayish color, grayish blue color. So there's not very many. It's about less than 10, right? And the composition and the color and everything, I think is in great balance, because say this group of people here are 3 ladies, but they each of them wearing different color, their positions different, the pattern on their dress are different. So is this group. And then in the centerpiece, you see this young lady, probably is a royal person, and was sitting there reading something. And then she has a servant serving her tea, and another one's holding the fans to her. But everything is in harmony. I think the color is very nicely blended, and also the composition has a variety, but it's very interesting. So now my question is, why would block print has so few color? That we have to find out the answer from how the wood block print is made. So actually involve at least 4 type of people. The first one, you never see them, is the publisher. They decide what theme, what kind of print will sell well, and they will hire the artist, they will hire the carver and the brusher. So if you're a hokusai, you draw your, this is hokusai, is a great wave. So you draw your paint on a very thin paper, and then the carver will put that print, the paper on the wood, and then he will start carving. If it's only one color, like the first one I showed to you, that's it. Then you use this to brush the ink. So the third person is the brusher. So he will brush the ink, and then he will put a piece of paper on top of it. Then he will rub it, and then you have one print. But if you have multiple color, you have to repeat this process multiple times. How many color you will have to carve, how many different wood block, because you can only apply one color at a time. That's why there's not very many color on wood block print. So I'd like to introduce to you this particular one. It's very different. The color theme is very different. And what else is different between this one and the previous one? The one with beautiful peach color and the purple color. Can anybody volunteer to share what's your thoughts?
They're subdued colors.
Yes, yes.
And there are
Much.
lots of people. It's much more complicated.
Yes,
Yes.
yes. And what else?
Only 2 panels, Yuan.
Ah, yes. You're all very observant.
Mm.
Is there anything else make this different compared with the previous one?
There are men in this one.
Ah, yes, yes. The other one only had women. Why? That's a very good observation, Karen. So we have different color, we have only 2 panels, we have a lot more people, and then we have men here. These are more for common people. The other one is for the royal people, right? That's probably, they could not be seen by men, but here you have street vendors, they are selling those mochi or whatever. So you have many different people, they use this particular technology, but you can use very different ways to express your feeling or your observation of cherry blossom. And this particular artist is also multi-talented, like Hokusai. He not only just do woodblock print, this is something we call album leaf, although he depicts the cherry blossom here very differently. So you can see there's only a little cherry surrounding a famous temple, and here he has the cherry on the table, probably some cherry in afar, and even a little bit cherry on this. I think it's a painting, and he also did a lot of wood book illustration, wood block print illustration. That's what Hokusai did as well. So he was drawing some cherry trees in between 2 rows of houses, and these are all restaurants, so people can sit there and drink sake and appreciating in the night scene. And then you can still see this kind of scenery in Japan even till today. You will see a lot of housing around this area. Some of them are restaurants. Now, come back to my favorite Hokusai again. He not only did block print, here is a hanging scroll, but it's mounted on a panel. I cannot draw, but I like photography. So when I take photography classes, the teacher always say 2 things: triangles, triangles, triangles. So you will see a lot of triangles in Hokusai's painting. Another thing the teacher would say: leading lines, leading lines, leading lines. So we have several leading lines here. Your eye will follow this bridge, go all the way to the other bank. And then once you get there, there's another leading line, lead you away with the beauty of the cherry tree. And then they have many characters here. Again, he likes to depict common people. So you can see these are vendors, and these are a young man carrying things on his back. The Japanese has a very interesting way carrying things. They put things probably in a box, and then they wrap around with a big piece of cloth so they can carry it on their back. And then for me, the most interesting group is here. Let's take a look at that one. So you have this young man scratching his head, and then the other young man probably is sneaking at this beautiful young lady here. But then there's an old man, he was just standing there, and like, I have seen all of these. He's so relaxed and so confident in himself. And then if you look at Hokusai's self-portrait, I found some similarities between these 2 men, even their gestures, right? So we don't know whether he depicts himself in this painting or not, but it's a hypothesis. So this is my hypothesis, but I probably can never get a final proof because we can't ask him anymore. But I think it's a likely hypothesis. Anyway, you probably heard of, in addition to Hokusai, you probably heard of Otagawa Hiroshige. He was one of the three most famous woodblock print artists. So let's take a look at what um, Utagawa do with how did he express the cherry blossom under his woodblock print. So here we have one tree with two farmers and with a lot of farmers' hut in the background. And here is probably a water gate to direct the water. And what do you think? What is special about this tree?
He's done it all sort of like almost like big blobs rather than all the individual little flowers.
Yes, yes. Thank you, Lynn. That was very observant. Yes. What else make this tree unique?
The colors change from the soft pink to the dark pink on the outside.
Exactly, exactly. So it's very interesting the way he did it. I'm sorry, there is somebody mowing the lawn, like out of my control. Sorry. So like I like to share with you another one, also signed as Otagawa Hiroshige. It's a Buddhist temple. They also have many cherry trees here. So I would like to ask you, between these two, do you think these two are by the same person?
Well, the trees are the same.
The trees aren't they the same?
No, but they're very similar, but they're not the
Okay.
same.
Okay, but there's some slight difference between
Yes.
the two types
There
of
is.
trees,
He's,
right?
he's showing the branches more.
Exactly, exactly. It's more obvious, the
Mm.
branches. And then if you are a person, I know a lot of you love nature. If you are watching the cherry blossom, you usually don't see the branches so clear if it's in full bloom because it's covered by the flowers. So this is more realistic to me, but than this one. So the tree is similar, and then we can also like take a look of how they do the figures. So here's some figures, here are some figures. Do you still think they might be, see the signature is identical here, okay? Do you still think they are by the same artist?
Well, the figures are done very similarly, almost like silhouettes.
Uh-huh. There's a little detail I already buried here, embedded here is this Otagawa passed away in 1858, and this print is published in 1861. So
You have a comment in the chat that they think it's a student's work.
very good, very good. Kate said that. Kate is also my friend. Yeah, she's from Cape Cod now. She moved to Woods Hole. So 1861 was 3 years after, and Kate is absolutely right. So this one is Otagawa Hiroshige's second. And he's not only his student, he married to his daughter. And after his master passed away, he was allowed to carry that name. All right, so I said I'm going to share with you some other format of art. And so we have a tea bowl with a design of cherry tree blossom here. It's in the style of a famous pot maker, Ogata Kanzen. So we're not 100% sure whether it's made by him or by one of his followers or his student. And notice there's something interesting about this bowl. If you look at the edge, the rim of this bowl, what do you see there? I can
It's like
make
you have
it
some
bigger.
chips, Yuan. Yeah, you have some chips or something, right?
Yes, there are some chips, and then, but there are some gold color, right? So that's the old way of fixing things. And because this bowl is so precious, they don't want to throw it away. What they did is instead they put some patch on top of it, and then they covered with gold to make it look beautiful. So you will see a lot of these in Japanese ancient antique ceramics. And I remember when I was young, there was a profession. There is an old man come to a home. They will fix your bowls for you. Use some staples. Seriously, and those are not expensive, not necessarily expensive antiques. I also like to share with you some lacquer work. Lacquer work is developed in China as well, but it was really brought to a high level by the Japanese. So this one has uh, lacquer and gold and silver. Silver is those darker colored because they're being oxidized. You can imagine when they are brand new, it's really silver color. And this has gorgeous, gorgeous little cherry, and then flowing water and rocks. And then here's the top of it. It's even more beautiful. You can see the details. Again, the lacquer is made very labor intensive. So you have to build a wood box first, and then you put a layer of lacquer. Lacquer is almost like tree sap. It's not like our usual paint. It's a tree sap, and then you paint it one layer, you wait it until it dry, and then you put a second layer. Sometimes there are 100 layers put it on, so you can imagine it would take months to make one piece. And then we're debating, Gretchen, remember we were debating whether this is the bottom or maybe the cover of the second box, since we can't go to the museum yet to see the real part. We don't know. I think more likely it's not the bottom, it's more likely it's the second, the inside part of it. Anyway, it's very beautiful. So remember I said at the beginning, the Japanese and the Chinese started to appreciate plum blossom first, and they are still being appreciated. So even till today, there's cherry blossom park, there's a plum blossom park. And if you go there, you will find out there's an age difference. The most of the people go to the plum blossom garden are more senior people. They appreciate the tradition. Also, they try to avoid the noise that the younger people made. Some of them might got drunk under the tree, have a wild party. So you will see they are being a little bit segregated by age. And then in recent centuries, there's a movement called New Woodblock Prints, Xinhanga movement. So here is one particular artist I like very much, and he did a lot of them. The Xinhanga, they combine the traditional woodblock print technique with Western painting technique. So these three, especially the one on the right, if I don't tell you this is a woodblock print, you probably would think this is a painting. It's not a woodblock print. So they also still depict both the plum and the cherry. Here's another one belong to this group. He did differently. He followed the suit of Hokusai, for example, 100 views of Mount Fuji. But if you compare his with Hokusai's, will be very, very different. You can certainly tell there's influence from Western painting. And he also did this, I found it very interesting, is a depict of family, like a mother with the child went to see the cherry blossom. And another one of my favorite artists in modern time is Kawasa Hasui. And he was one of the leading artists in this movement as well. He did 12 scenes of Tokyo. I really found this one so charming, so lovely. See the cherry already start to fall down, the flowers, but the children is bending down and just picking the flowers and playing with them. It's very heartwarming. And he also did something like the Chinese fan, like a round one. I also found this one very similar. If you walk near the tidal basin, you will see the road with a little bridge like that. And I like to quote a haiku with you about cherry. It says, moon at twilight, a cluster of petals falling from the cherry tree. So for the Japanese, the falling petals also carry the beauty of the cherry blossom. Here we have a hanging scroll of two geisha reading from a book. Again, very much like the screen I shared with you at the very beginning, I can feel it. I can not just open my eyes, I can open my ears, I can hear the breeze, I can open my nose, I can smell the scent, and this little wind is blowing the pages of the book. I probably can even hear the flipping sound of the book under the wing. It's just so beautiful. So these are two ladies in the 19th century appreciating the falling cherry petals. Now, let's turn our page to the 21st century, see what the young ladies do nowadays when they go to see a cherry blossom blowing to their face. The first thing is they're going to take out their cell phone and probably even take a selfie under the tree. Time has changed, but I think the beauty and the spirit of appreciating cherry blossom still last. I have a few reference books here if you're interested. Here is a book by National Geographic it's the official book of the National Cherry Blossom Festival. And the one on the right, actually, Library of Congress was giving some talk. Unfortunately, I missed them this year. It's the Sakura collection from the Library of Congress. And the one in the center is our own book. I have all these three books, is our collection. So some of the art I share with you, you can find in this book. You can buy all of these three books still. All of them are still available on Amazon. Thank you so much for sharing your time with me today. I also like to share with you this particular wood block print as our conclusion. This is the Washington Monument by this artist that I like very much, Kawasa Hasui. Interesting thing is he has never been in the United States, let alone to Washington to see this. I think he probably do this with block print based on a photograph or somebody else painting. So we have more than a dozen of tours, online tours, although we're going to open the on-site tour, we will still continue our online tours. And you have taken one with me last year, the art across culture. And today we did the cherry blossom, but we have numerous others. So for example, Freer in Egypt, our friend Gretchen is the expert because she was a diplomat in Egypt together with her husband for years. And she's really knows the in and out about Egyptian culture. She also did the art in the Islamic world because she's very familiar with that culture. We also have Chinese brush painting, Chinese ceramic, Korean ceramic. We also have natures in the arts of Asia. We have peacock room and American art. And currently we have a fashioning of an empire. It's a current exhibition. You can actually better come in to see it in your own eyes. And the website is here. If you, the cherry blossom, Lynn was your forum. If you want to book more with us, or some of you want to come in with your friends and your family, we take the minimum 10 people. So you can reserve more tour with us. And thank you again for sharing a wonderful afternoon with us. And I'm going to stop sharing and see if we have any questions or comments or.
Yuan, that was so fun. You have a question in the chat from Peggy, who wants to be reminded for the word for the concept of transitional beauty.
Say it again. What was the word for the concept of transitional beauty? In Japanese, you mean hanami itself? Yes, hanami. Actually, hanami itself means flower viewing. That literally means flower viewing, okay? But it was more used, now it's almost represent cherry blossom viewing, but still there are people viewing plum blossom. So the original meaning just viewing blossom.
You said something about like viewing the cherry blossoms is like viewing a transitional beauty or something.
Right, that's my interpretation actually. Let me see, let me go back to that slide. I think I know what your question was. Here, I can share that again with you. So hanami literally means flower viewing. Okay, there's two characters, flower viewing. So the interpretation of that is enjoying the transit beauty of flowers. That's the explanation of it, but the word itself doesn't mean that.
Yuan, I'm curious if young people today in China are as interested in art or as interested really in the cherry blossoms as they were in past centuries.
You mean in China or in Japan? You said in China.
Oh, I guess really in Japan.
You mean in Japan, right?
Yeah.
Viewing cherry blossom is a national passion. I'm sure there are young artists still interested in that as well. They probably use different means now. They do photography, they use different media. not necessarily wood block print, because that's a trade that requires many years to be
Yeah.
trained.
It'd be interesting to see a YouTube video on woodblock printing.
Actually, there's a movement now in Japan try to revive or carry the tradition of cherry blossom, not cherry blossom, carry the tradition of woodblock print. Like I said, it's a trade very hard to learn. You need to spend years. It's not something as you pick up your cell phone, you can take a pretty good picture. So after the one I introduced to you called Singhaga, their movement to try to preserve that, but it's not that popular. You have to be really dedicated to do that. But they have different ways of like they could paint the kimono. You can see this on this picture. I can share with you again. On this picture, these people, when they on their kimono, it's probably cherry blossom patterns. So there are many different ways of expressing, not necessarily just woodblock print, but probably other type of painting or ceramics. And lacquer is more difficult to learn also, but ceramics is easier. When I was in Japan, they took me to a workshop, and you pay a fee, you sit there and they teach you a little basic, and then you make a mug, and then they even mail it back to me. I should dig that out. That was my first ever mug, probably the last one too. Handmade. Do we have any other questions?